bitter end. Come and join us, DNVR. We are DNVR.
Welcome into the DNVR Broncos podcast on this wonderful Wednesday. Let's get through hump day together. I'm your host, Zach Stevens, joined by my man, Andrew Mason, coming live from Studio B here at the DNVR Bar. And before we hop into today's show, got to tell you about our presenting sponsor, MSU Denver Online. MSU Denver Online is the new urban online university. They did this before anyone else. They have learning outcomes equivalent to face-to-face courses online, which is unheard of at other universities. But over at MSU Denver, they deliver. They have great gen eds taught by real people and professors who bring the real world into the classroom, which is so valuable. So make sure to check them out over at MSU Denver Online. My boy, Mace, what is going on, my friend?
Oh, not too much. I'm at the hump. You're over the hump. Because on Friday you're going to be on a plane, right?
Over the hump, yes. You're
You're over the hump today, or you went over the hump between yesterday and today, and you're going to be over the ocean on Friday.
Man, Mace,
Yes.
This is about the only time I don't think about it,
Yes.
but now I'm thinking about it. So, man, if there's nothing better than talking Broncos, it's talking Broncos while thinking about a little vacation.
Or just having the vacation. No offense to talking Broncos, but getting a vacation on the islands of Hawaii right before the start of training camp sounds just lovely.
And you look like you still got your little vacation glow going on from last week.
Yeah, Florida, just hours in the pool, hours frolicking around, hours swimming laps, just
Not bad.
It's amazing how when you're in a pool, whether you're at a hotel or I was in my parents' backyard pool, it's amazing how you lose track of time.
Oh, yeah.
Like
especially in the summer.
Yeah, you look up, oh my gosh, it's already 5 o'clock. And you feel like it was 20 minutes and you hopped in the pool at about 12:30. And you've been in 4.5 hours and you forgot to eat lunch.
Man, and swimming, boy, that gets the biggest appetite.
Oh gosh, yeah, that's a lot of fun.
I know on other pods they talk about, how you're supposed to wait 20 minutes before you swim after you eat for many reasons.
I jumped right in. I had lunch and then I was in the pool like 5 minutes later. It's funny, like when I was a kid, for a while I did that, but with my parents having a pool being in Florida, I tested that out when I was about 12, 13 years old. It's complete bull.
So we just broke the conversation's been going on the draft or the betting show,
Yeah.
and we just broke that.
Yeah,
It's not true.
Maybe it's true for other people. It's not. I mean, for me, it's bogus.
Stomach of steel.
I guess
Nice.
so. Yes. I had an ex-girlfriend in my 20s that said I had a cast iron stomach because back in those days I was eating at Taco Bell 3 times a week.
I thought you were gonna say 3 times a day. I was gonna say you really do.
Oh no. But now it's not as cast iron as it used to be because I can only eat Taco Bell about once a year.
Oh, well, yeah, that is quite
It's
different.
an annual meal during training camp. An annual dinner is to go to Taco Bell.
Man, Taco Bell sounds good. And Mace, we're not even at 10:30 right now.
Yeah.
But let's see how strong your stomach is for this conversation. Talking about Broncos sack totals, where they should be. Mace, we've talked about Mike Clay's projections for this 2021 season many times on this pod, and we're going to go back because when I was looking through his projections, I was really caught off guard by what he has the Broncos doing in terms of getting after the quarterback and getting sacks. Mace, right now, Mike Clay projects the Broncos to have 40 sacks this year. When you hear that number and nothing else, what do you think? Is that good? Bad?
Well, I think back of what they've done over the last 3 years. In 2018, they had 44 sacks. That was 9th in sack total. They were 10th in sack rate when you do it on a per pass play basis.
Top 10?
Yeah, so top 10. 2019, they had 40 sacks.
Oh.
They were 17th in sacks, 14th in sack rate.
So
and then
average.
And then in 2020, they had 42 sacks, but sacks were down across the league last year substantially. I think it's the 4th biggest 1 year drop in sack rate that we have seen since the merger happened last year. Of course, holding penalties also dropped. I think they're connected. And last year, 42 sacks, that still got the Broncos top 10. They were 9th in sacks and they were 10th in sack rate.
Okay.
So if you tell me 40, I would say, wow, that's lower than I expect.
Yeah,
Substantially.
That makes my stomach turn a little bit, Mason. Yeah, it's like having a cup. Maybe it's equivalent to having 3 Taco Bell meals in a single day is how I feel seeing 40 sacks because of exactly what you said, Mace. You said that compared to the past few years, this would be a little below average, kind of where they've been. And when we talk about this defense over the past couple of years, they've been good. They haven't been great. This defense every single year has supposed to have been great. They're supposed to be outstanding this year. And 40 sacks, according to Mike Clay, Mace, because you just went through those numbers, you have a fairly good idea where this would put him. Where do you think it puts him?
12th.
12th? Mike Clay has them behind the Cardinals, Bills, Panthers, Browns, Colts, Chiefs, Rams, Dolphins, Jets, Steelers, Seahawks, 49ers, Bucks, Titans, Washington football team. He has them behind 15 teams, and he has them tied with the Falcons, the Packers, the Saints, the Eagles. So he has them a below average.
Wait a minute. Does he have Washington 15th?
He does. Well, no, not necessarily. No, not that wasn't the list.
Oh, okay. All right. Because I heard that. I'm like,
He just has them behind all of those teams.
Wow.
I'm sure Washington's right up there.
I heard that. I'm like, Washington that low? I mean, I feel very good. The Broncos are going to be a top 10 team in terms of sacks because I think they're going to have more opportunities to get sacks. Although it was interesting. Remember how Vance Joseph used to talk about how, you've got to have opportunities. You've got to play from ahead.
Oh, the famous Vance Joseph line.
Yeah, to get sacks as the Fox Sports chime rings in there. But in Vance Joseph's second season on the job, the Broncos were 9th in sacks.
Yeah.
And they were 10th in sack rate.
Yeah.
So they
and
actually
that's when Von Miller was great too in 2018, his last good season.
The last great year for Von Miller. Now, to date, he could have another great year going forward. And also the year in which Von and Bradley Chubb were together. And we've talked about this, how there is a clear connection between Von Miller having increased productivity and having a Pro Bowl caliber edge on the opposite side. Right. Because he's always been more productive with those guys. You go back to Elvis Dumervil, through DeMarcus Ware, and on to Bradley Chubb. He's always more productive when he's got somebody over there on the other side.
And those guys had, 26 and a half combined sacks in 2018?
They did.
And that's, man, Mace, to me, and I know I hold these guys to a higher standard than most, that's kind of the floor of where I want these guys to be. If they hit that, I'm like, okay, that's fine. It wasn't a failure of the season from those guys. But it's really, I'm not saying great job by any means if they're 26. And, Mace, they should be better. Bradley Chubb was a rookie when he did that. And he went on a big streak in that year where he didn't have a single sack, and then obviously went on streaks where he had tons of sacks at a time. But he needs to take that step where he's consistent in playing at that level and being a really good player. And then also you're paying Von Miller $20 million a year. He better be that type of player this year. And a couple weeks ago, we talked about just these two guys and our expectations for them. But for me, let's look at the team itself. Mace, why they should be so much better than average or below average is because, to me, when I think of it basically, sacks come down to 4 things. First, the talent that you have rushing the passer, and that includes Von Miller, Bradley Chubb. It also includes the guys inside. You have Draymond Jones, who a lot of people expect to be the breakout candidate of the Broncos this year. You have Shelby Harris, who we know he can get after the pass rusher. And heck, Mike Purcell, we saw it a little bit last year before he got hurt, that for a big guy, he can have a little push up there. Now, you're not expecting 5 sacks from him, but maybe 1 or 2, and also freeing up some other guys. So the talent. The second thing is secondary. How good is the secondary? The third thing that comes into this is how good is the defensive scheme for the pass rushers? And the fourth thing is what Vance Joseph points to, which Ryan and I have laughed at many times, is your offense has to be setting yourself up in a good position, meaning you got to be playing with the leader. The game's got to be competitive. You can't be playing from behind. Now, those 4 things aren't weighted the same to me. Like, why I kind of laughed at Vance is that's the first thing he would point to in terms of why the team wasn't getting sacks. Well, it's the offense. No,
excuse.
No. Yes.
That's the thing. He pointed to an excuse.
Right.
Although, in his mind, he may have viewed it as a reason.
Yeah.
But as head coach, he's in charge of the offense, too.
And that's what I'm saying. It is a reason, but it's certainly not as important in my mind as the other 3 things. I think the most important thing is obviously the players that you have rushing the passer. Broncos, elite It should, on paper, it's elite. They're paying to be elite. When you look at the talent, it's elite. From inside to out as well. Then you look at the secondary, which I think is the second most important thing. Broncos have the best secondary in the NFL. They absolutely should. They've invested in it. On paper it is. And we've seen play from each one of these guys. That means it should be. They have an all-pro safety. They have a Pro Bowl safety. They have an all-pro cornerback, a Pro Bowl cornerback. They have guys that are making $10 million a year and when healthy. Bryce Callahan is arguably the best slot corner. And by the way, they just used a number 9 overall pick on Patrick Surtain. So, elite secondary group. And then the third thing on the defensive side is that defensive scheme. Vic Fangio was brought here to make the defense elite. That should also be elite. So, and then you look at the offensive side of the ball and putting the defense in a good position. That's probably average. It's probably a little better than it's been the past couple of years, but that's average. So you have one average, which is the least important. And then the other 3 categories, Mace, you're supposed to be elite. So, be an average, finishing with the 15th most sacks in the NFL. Give me a break.
Well, the other thing is you talk about the investment involved with it. There are 28 edge rushers, according to Over the Cap, who are making at least $8 million this year.
Okay.
Now, strangely, this doesn't include Shaq Barrett because of the way his contract is structured down in Tampa Bay. He actually only has a $5 million salary.
Wow.
This year. It's a backloaded deal.
Thanks to Tom Brady, right?
Yeah, they made it work, and they're counting on that big cap bump when the new television contracts kick in, and of course the Amazon Prime deal as well. But there are, Zach, 6 teams who have at least 2 edge rushers making $8 million a year, and the Broncos are one of them. Now, San Francisco, believe it or not, has 3 because they've got Nick Bosa, Dee Ford, and Eric Armstead all in that group. As counted as edge rushers on Over the Cap.
I was going to say, do you count Eric Armstead as an edge rusher?
See, I really don't. So let's say they're 2, and that's fine. That's 6 teams with 2. Denver, San Francisco, Chicago, Green Bay, Las Vegas, and Buffalo. So
Las Vegas, really?
Las Vegas has Cleveland Farrell making about $8.5 million. And the Raiders also have, let's see here.
Oh, it's okay. I'm
no,
not
they remember they
testing you.
signed Yannick Ngakoue.
Yep.
So
for a pretty cheap deal from what people thought he was going to get.
Yeah, I mean, $13 million a year for Ngakoue. Actually, if he plays the way he played most of the last 3 years, that's going to be a bargain.
Right.
If he plays the way he did after the trade, it's going to be a bust.
Right.
The Raiders are counting on obviously the bargain side of it. But those are the teams that have substantial investments in 2 edge rushers. And the Broncos, and when you combine Chubb and Von Miller, it's more for a salary. It is nearly at $31 million right now. Or just under that, because Chubb is at 8.847, Vaughn is at 22.125.
Yeah.
That is just a tick under $31 million.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be merely middle of the pack, or even like on the low end of the top 10. That investment says if you don't get top 5 production from those 2 guys on the edge, you should be very disappointed.
Yeah, and if you're getting top 5 production on the edge from those 2 guys, Mace, and that's kind of a floor for those 2 guys in my mind, then you're going to get it from Draymond Jones. He's going to have that breakout year because the talent's there, and you know you're going to get it from Shelby Harris. And then just coupled with other people, you're going to be able to get to over 40 sacks. Should be pretty easy. And Mace, that number that you said, just around $30 million between Bradley Chubb and Von Miller, that's my standard now for Vaughn and Chubb this year. We say $1 million per sack. Well, I'm saying they got to get that. Between the 2 of them, 30 sacks.
Who gets more?
Oh, man.
Because with Vaughn, I did the story earlier this week, of course, at thednvr.com, looking at his his recent sack rate, looking at his career numbers when he has someone of quality on the opposite side, and also taking into account he's 32 years old. He's going into year 11. If he has 13 sacks, and obviously he's got one more game to do it, but if he has 13 sacks, he becomes the first 32-plus edge rusher with a 13-sack season since Robert Mathis back in 13.
Wow, almost a decade.
Yeah, so it's actually something. It was interesting how you used to see plenty of seasons in which guys who were 32 and older had 12, 13, 14, 15 sacks. It's it's gone to a trickle over the last decade. So Vaughn is actually fighting a little bit of recent league history here. Those good seasons we were talking about earlier this week with Julius Peppers in his mid-30s, they were like 11 sacks, not 30. So if you're talking about 30 sacks between the two of them, and Vaughn's at 13, you're asking Chubb to be a 17-sack guy, a sack-a-game guy. Can he be that guy?
He should be, being a top 5 pick.
Yeah.
He absolutely should be. And Mace, you're baiting me.
Of course I am.
To take Bradley Chubb to be that guy, and I don't want to take it. But I have to, because who had the most recent 10-sack season?
Of the two of them?
Well, it was both of them.
Yeah, it was the same time because Chubb got hurt early in 19.
That is
and
crazy.
And Chubb and Chubb was behind Malik Reid in sacks last year.
That is crazy that neither of them have had double-digit sacks for 2 straight years. Now, obviously, there's been injuries thrown in, but that is just crazy to think about. That combined, they've gone 4 seasons without a 10-sack season. But Bradley Chubb is the guy that should be trending up, where Von Miller, like you kind of just mentioned, about 32-year-olds, should be trending down for the most part. So I'm going to go with the guy that's trending up, and I'm going to go with Chubb.
Okay, yeah.
Do I have a ton of confidence in that? We've never seen it from him.
If you're an opposing blocking scheme, though, who are you thinking about more?
Vaughn.
I'm trying to protect my passer. I'm thinking about Vaughn.
I am too. Because the freakish talent is there. We saw it with an 18-sack season.
He still has the athleticism.
Yeah,
we can see that in the glimpses from practice as well. I mean, there was a moment in OTAs, and yeah, it's not full pads. We get that, but it was Cameron Fleming he was going against.
Don't do that to him.
That
Vaughn.
poor dude didn't have a chance against Vaughn.
He had no chance.
Oh my gosh! I mean, Vaughn looked like Vaughn, but again, it's not the regular season. I get it, but Vaughn looks like Vaughn, and the thing is, you're not going to face all pros every week. Some weeks you're going to face substandard or subpar starters. Some weeks you're going to face backups, and for every player, whether you're a Hall of Famer or just a middle-of-the-road guy, you're probably going to do better and feast against some of those lesser tackles. I mean, look at when Vaughn was the Super Bowl MVP.
We know who he was going up
And
against.
he got to face Mike Remmers.
Yep.
Well, great players take advantage of the matchups in front of them.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, Vaughn's not going to have at least 1 sack every game. He's going to go up against some tackles, and he's going to get stonewalled. But he's going against some other tackles, and you're hoping he can feast. And the thing that was maybe missing back in 2019, for example, when both early in the season when Bradley Chubb was out there, and then after Chubb's injury, is he didn't have the feasts that he usually has, and that's what he's got to get back to. Because for him to have that sack tally be what you're talking about for somebody who's getting this sort of contract, he's got to have those games where it comes in clumps.
Right.
It's, in baseball, you'd say, okay, you can't just put up a round number or straight number. You got to have some crooked numbers. Vaughn needs some crooked numbers on his sack line.
Yep.
He needs some 2s and maybe even a 3.
Yep.
In a game.
Especially because sacks come in bunches, and
Right.
know there's going to be 1 or 2 or 3 games where he doesn't have a sack. You're right. When they come in bunches, it can't be 3 games with 3 sacks. Make it 3 games with 5 sacks, and then we're talking about a monster season. And Jared comes in the comment section with a good point, and he says, Chubb, Malik Reid, and Von Miller need 35 collective sacks minimum. I like where your head's at there, Jared. And Mason, let's get into some details of why he only has the Broncos getting 40 sacks. Let's look at specific numbers. But first, let's get into our Draftkings pick of the week. And I had to get this one in today, Mace. We couldn't push it later in the week because I love what I found on DraftKings Sportsbook. I love what I saw from the Milwaukee Bucks this weekend in their Game 3, keeping the series alive. The Milwaukee Bucks are going to win tonight, Mace. And then they're going to lose Game 5 in Phoenix. They're going to win Game 6. And then they're going to win Game 7.
Why do I need to watch the NBA Finals now? You just told me what's going to happen.
You don't need to. And if you go to DraftKings Sports, you'll get it plus 200. Don't wait until after the Bucks win tonight, because then it's probably going to be close to plus 100. Get in now. I like the Milwaukee Bucks, Mace. I think they've got it. And they showed this resilience when they played the Nets. They were down 2-0. Then they won Game 3. Then they won game 4. Then it was 2-2. Then they lost. Then they won. And then in game 7, when it all meant everything, they won. I think that's what's going to happen again. So go Shelby Harris, go Bucks.
All right, I'm going to go to soccer. You've got the Gold Cup going on right now, and of course it's the championship for CONCACAF, which is the Confederation of North America, Central America, and the Caribbean in soccer. And you've got Thursday night, the United States taking on Martinique, and the USA won their opening game in the Gold Cup, 1-0 against Haiti. Martinique, they're the minnows of this group that the U.S. is in. They're in Group B with Canada, Haiti, Martinique. And Canada, just an okay side, routed Martinique in the first match, beat them 4-1. Now, if you bet the money line, the U.S., obviously, you're not. The U.S. is 1-12 on the money line. Ooh. So stay away from that. You want to see, okay, can I, put a little bit of money on potentially big score. The U.S., their form is good. Of course, that they had that win over Mexico here in Denver last month in the friendly that everyone was watching. I like the USA to win and win big. There's a number here, -4.5. So the U.S. wins by basically they have to win by 5 goals. It's 37-10. So 3.7 to 1 basically.
Okay.
I'm gonna put a little bit on the U.S. putting up a big number against Martinique and winning 6-1.
Wow.
And covering this 4.5 because they've got various spreads on this. If you want to be a pessimist and bet on Martinique to win, there's a number Martinique plus 0.5 and 11-2. If you want to be a pessimist, go for that.
I love it, Mace. I love it. And if you want to get in on my pick of the week, well, you probably also want to get on this other deal that DraftKings is offering right now. They're giving new users the chance to turn $1 into $150 in site credits. All you have to do is pick the basketball team that you think is going to win the next game, and if they win, you turn that $1 into $150 in site credits over at DraftKings Sportsbook, which is America's top-rated sportsbook app. So why don't you do that with the Bucks? Plus also throw the plus 200 on them to win the entire series, and man, you could be rolling in some good money. And of course, you can get in on daily odds boost for baseball. You can still get in on odds boost for basketball until the finals are over, and it is so much fun. We had a blast checking out things on DraftKings Sportsbook over this past couple days with the home run derby, with the All-Star game. It was so much fun. So make sure to head to the App Store now and download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code DNVR when you sign up to turn $1 into $150 in free site credits if the basketball team of your choice wins. That's all it takes is $1 to win $150 using the code DNVR when you sign up at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older, Colorado only. New customers only for a limited time only. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700.
Want to tell you also about our friends over at Breckenridge Brewery, the official beer of DNVR. They're also cranking out hard seltzers, good company hard seltzers, and they are being sold in the DNVR bar. And if you come on down the DNVR bar, you can get in on something with Breckenridge Brewery and the National Parks Conservation Association. Last year's fires were devastating for so many in Colorado, and this is one of the reasons why Breck is going to donate 1% of all their profits this summer to the National Parks Conservation Association. So if you buy Breckenridge Brews or Good Company hard seltzers anywhere, 1% of those profits is going to go to help the great outdoors. But the big thing here at the DNVR bar, come on down, have a Breck Brew or seltzer, and you can win some swag from our friends at Breck Brew. You can also enter to win a $30,000 escape pod trailer if you head to their website and enter to win. So go to breckbrew.com/ingoodco. That's breckbrew.com/ingoodco for more details on winning the $30,000 escape pod trailer. And of course, we've got, like I said, we got seltzers at the DNVR bar, and if you want to check out the Farmhouse, their restaurant down at their brewery in Littleton, do that as well. It's right off Santa Fe. You can use that magical code DNVR and get $5 off your meal. You can go pick it up from noon to 8 p.m. or you can dine in as well. If you want to go pick it up, call 303-803-1380 and get in on that. And like I said, use that magical code DNVR and get $5 off your meal at the Farmhouse. A terrific place to go eat. So if you're in central Denver, go to the DNVR bar, have some Breck brews. If you're down in Littleton, check out the Farmhouse down at the brewery in Littleton. And have yourself some breakthroughs there.
For everyone tuning in live, we really, really appreciate it. Please switch over to our YouTube channel where it's a better quality. The stream is better, and also the chat is better. It's where you really get to interact with people. Once you're there, please hit us with a thumbs up. It really supports us and really helps us get to the top, so there's more of you guys watching and able to interact. And also hit us with a subscribe and an alert so you don't miss any of our live shows. Guys, we got some awesome plans for training camp coming around, just 2 weeks away, and we're going to be all over these live shows during camp. So make sure to hit us with a thumbs up and a subscribe. And something else that helps us out is becoming a member of our family. Go to thednvr.com and join our family. There's so many perks. Not only do you get a chance to join us on these live streams, but you get a member beer when you're at the bar, which is free beer. It's a 22-ounce beer for the price of a 16-ounce beer. Online, you get access to the online Discord, which is a members-only Discord. It's like Twitter, but way better, more of a family environment. And, of course, when you sign up for that annual membership, you get a free shirt of your choice when you do so. So make sure to check us out. We'd really appreciate it. And once you do, make sure to jump into the comments section and say hello. But Mace, before we get into the comment section, let's talk about how Mike Clay got here. I'm going to read you some sack totals from individual players on this team. And Mace, I want you to say if that's acceptable from this player or disappointing. So let's just start right off the bat. Let's start with Draymond Jones. He has him at 4.7 sacks. I'm going to round up. I'm going to say Draymond Jones gets 5 sacks.
Slightly disappointing.
Really? Really? Okay, what are your expectations for Draymond? I like hearing this.
I expect him to have 6 to 8.
Okay, 6 to, man, then he would be the breaking player.
Well,
one of the breakout players.
Well, he showed signs of doing that last year. I mean, he had 6 sacks last year. He's, you figure another year. It's another year with Shelby Harris as well, and I think that's a key thing because just as chemistry matters on the offensive line, it matters on the defensive line as well. Think back to how well Malik Jackson and Derek Wolf work together, and you see that same kind of cohesion developing between Shelby Harris and Draymond Jones.
Those were a quiet 6 sacks last year.
Yeah.
That's impressive. So, Mace, you convinced me. I think the floor for him for acceptable needs to be 6, and I agree. I'm happy if he's at 6. If he's at more, then I'm really happy.
Well, I think I'd say the floor for acceptable is probably 4.5 or 5 because, things can go a different way. Maybe he has some injuries, et cetera, that hold him back a little bit.
You can't really think about injuries in this.
Right. Well, I will say this, that Mike Clay does kind of account for the possibility of injuries, and that's why generally we see in his projections they're a bit on the low side. Like at quarterback, I mean, whether it's injury or benching, he's got Drew Lock playing 13 games.
Right. Yeah, but compared to other teams, these Broncos numbers, sack totals are pretty low here, even when he takes that into account. So Draymond Jones, we want to be at 6. Shelby Harris, he has him at 3.9, so we'll say 4. Disappointing?
Not really.
Wow, okay.
I mean, I expect Shelby to be somewhere between 3 and 7.
Okay.
So maybe he's kind of on the low side of it. The thing with Shelby that you're factoring in is pass deflections.
Right.
And that number isn't on here. When you take sacks and deflections and put them together, over the last couple of years, in terms of the rate relative to the number of plays that he's playing, he's actually in Aaron Donald's conversation. I'm not saying Shelby Harris is Aaron Donald, but
that's what you said.
In that specific area, that specific metric, and Bill Kolar counts pass deflections at the line of scrimmage like sacks in his calculus. So that's one of the reasons why Shelby Harris is back with the Broncos and why they're willing to write him the check.
Yeah, and like you said, you're going to account those in. But Shelby Harris has a 5.5 sack season and a 6 sack season. When he got that 6 sack season, he only started 6 games. He played in all 16, but only started in 6. So that's why I'm putting the bar for him, the low bar, to be 5. Hit 5, and then it's acceptable. But so right now, Mace, we're kind of falling already 2 sacks short. We can see how ground can be made up. Mike Purcell, he's got 1.5 sacks.
That's about fine. That's about right.
I agree. That's fine.
He's a nose tackle, and we're going to see so much sub-package work this year that Mike Purcell may not have the type of snaps or the quantity of snaps to where you're talking about him being a guy who has a lot of sacks. It's also not his skill set as well. He's a plugger up the middle. He's going to occupy some blockers, and if he does that, you're not really concerned about the sack number with him.
No, I think Mike Purcell will have 2 but not disappointed at 1.5. And then between the backup defensive lineman, Mace, he's got 2.5 sacks between Deshaun Williams, McTelvin Ajim, Shamar Stephen, and Marquise Spencer. So I think that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's they're numbers that kind of make you laugh. Like he's got Marquise Spencer with 0.1 sacks, which obviously can't happen. But
yeah, so I think that's fair as well. So between the big guys, we say they should have 2 more sacks. So that would bring the total to 42. I didn't expect a drastic difference from what Mike Clay has to our expectations and getting the Broncos into the top 10 from the defensive line. But here's where it gets interesting, Mace. Edge rushers. Von Miller, he's got right at 9.5 sacks. So he's saying that Von can't break the curse that's been on old pass rushers since Robert Mathis.
yeah, that would be disappointing.
It would be.
I would say with Vaughn, the acceptable total, if he plays at least 15, 16 games, the acceptable total probably starts at 11.
And Mace, that just hurts my heart hearing that be acceptable. But you're not alone. A lot of people say that, and thank goodness it's at least in double digits.
Acceptable doesn't necessarily mean that you're giving him the contract that he wants, and that's the key thing. If Vaughn is a guy who, again, has that Julius Peppers type of 30-something arc, he's going to have some years where he has 10, 11 sacks. He's also going to have some years where he has 7.5 or 8. Peppers, I believe, averaged 8.5 sacks per season from age 32 onward. So that's fine, and as a pass rush specialist, that can be helpful. But you hope that his contract is right-sized for that going forward. If it's the right-sized kind of contract, you're comfortable with it.
Yeah.
And hi, Eric.
And Mace, for me, he's 5 sacks off where he needs to be in this. He needs to be a 14.5. And we saw it. The last time he broke 10 sacks was 14.5 sacks in 2018. You're not paying him to be a good Von Miller. You're paying him to be a great Von Miller. And I think the bar for great is 14.5. So that's a huge discrepancy for me. Von is 5 sacks off where he needs to be.
Well, and also, if you're talking about the 1 sack per million, which I think is starting to go by the wayside, as contract values are going up, that 1 sack per million would mean he needs to get into Michael Strahan, Jared Allen territory.
And that's why I've even moved away from that in these expectations. I'm saying 14.5 when he's getting paid the over $20 million. So for me, 5 sacks off for you. He's 1.5 sacks off, kind of the floor for you. Bradley Chubb, he's got it 7.8 sacks. We'll round it up to 8 and say 8 sacks for Bradley Chubb. Man, again, disappointing.
Yeah, even though he had 7.5 last year.
Yeah.
And so this would be a slight increase.
Wild.
I think his range is probably going to be. He has a wide range. He may have a wider range of possibilities than Von Miller does, because it's possible that Bradley just explodes and has that kind of career-defining 16-plus sack season that Von has had, that Elvis has had, that all the great pass rushers usually have at some point. That one gear that just jumps out as
their
signature season.
For that. Yep.
Yeah, and probably 16.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's on the upper end of this, the lower end of the range for Bradley Chubb. And this is sort of where, okay, maybe the injuries continue to dog him a little bit. The lower end of the range is 7. I hope we're not talking about that.
Oh, killer.
And I think with Chubb in the end, we're going to be talking about 11 to 13 sacks.
Mace, I can't say you're wrong, though. I mean, Bradley Chubb got injured in 2019, so we're just going to scratch that one. But before that, he wasn't having a good season. Last year, 7.5 sacks. Yeah, he made the Pro Bowl, but from a sack perspective, it wasn't there. Didn't
have Vaughn opposite him, though. Just as it helps Vaughn having Chubb on the opposite flank, clearly I think it helped Chubb having Vaughn, even though Malik Reid was decently productive on the other side.
So I can't say that you're wrong for saying that he could have as few as 7. But he did have 12 his rookie year, and I need to see that type of production again. Mm-hmm. But I'll go a little bit notch further for acceptable, and I'll say 11. So between Vaughn and Chubb, Mace, I've got 8 additional sacks here. Okay. Is what I'm expecting. What really, not what I think is going to happen, but what needs to happen for this Broncos team. And you mentioned Malik Reid, 3.1 sacks. So we'll say 3 sacks for Malik. For a backup, how does that sit with you? And an important thing here is he's got Vaughn playing 854 snaps. He's got Bradley Chubb playing 799 snaps. He's got Malik Reid cut in half, 361 snaps, and he has 3 sacks.
I mean, that's fair. I mean, let's take, for example, Shaq Barrett when he was with the Broncos. In his 4 seasons, and he started 15 games in that span, his 4 years as mostly a rotational guy were 5.5, 1.5, 4, and 3 sacks. So you add those up, that's 14 sacks. So that's 14 sacks over 4 years. So that's an average of 3.5 per season. So if you're a rotational guy, that's actually a reasonable number.
Yep.
And that's where with Shaq, and any player, this is why what I always do is I evaluate them on sack rate. I evaluate how many sacks are they having per pass rush opportunity. You can get the pass rush snaps, of course, off Pro Football Focus, and go from there. It's a pretty easy calculus to have. And that was one reason why I thought Shaq Barrett was worthy of a little bit more love, because he always had a high sack rate and he had a high pressure rate. And Malik Reid showed signs that he could be one of those guys with a high sack rate and pressure rate last year too.
And I think what's going to hold Malik back is the opportunities he gets. I actually think 361 snaps for him would be kind of on the high side for him. I hope he sees that many. But Mace,
you have 2 edge rushers who are coming off of injuries, though.
Yep.
So I mean, if you're putting these through insurance style actuarial tables, you'd say, okay, given the recent injury history of Bradley Chubb and Von Miller, there's a decent chance that Malik Reid plays a bunch of snaps. Now, I'll say this: if he plays a substantial number of snaps, and say Von misses a couple of games and Chubb misses a couple of games, let's say they combine to miss 6 games, and Malik Reid starts all 6 of those games, then I expect Malik Reid's sack number to probably be somewhere around the best of Shaq Barrett's seasons in Denver, which was 5 sacks.
Yep, and that's why I was going to say I think Malik should be around the 5 mark.
Okay.
There's no true bar for him. I'm not disappointed if he gets 3 if the opportunities aren't there. But I'll give one more sack to Malik Reid because he's a talent. I'll give him 2. I'll say he should be a 5.
That's fair.
And Mace, in terms of value, though, the value isn't even close with what you're getting in Malik Reid.
Yeah.
Malik Reid's getting a sack every 120 snaps, according to Mike Clay. Bradley Chubb's getting a sack every 100 snaps he's on the field. And Von Miller's getting a sack every 90 snaps that he's on the field. So, Von getting paid the most. He's the most productive. He is doing the best in terms of production. Bradley Chubb, second most. He's getting that. But Malik Reid, it's not like he's 10 times off these guys. He's only 20% behind Bradley Chubb, 30% behind Von Miller, and yet he's getting paid buck kiss compared to those guys. So the value is there. So this is something that if this plays out, the Broncos can't ignore this offseason when they're thinking, do we sign Von Miller up to another, 4-year, $80 million extension and let Malik Reid go? No, you got to look at the production here.
Yeah, you have to take a long, hard look. And now that being said, John Elway's not going to be involved in this decision in all likelihood. It's going to be a George Payton call, so this isn't going to be something where, did they learn a lesson from Shaq Barrett? Well, no, because you're going to have somebody different making the call on this guy and somebody who, on these guys, probably because you're talking about evaluating kind of Vaughn and Malik Reid together and what their future outlook is like.
Right.
But at the same time, I mean, with all respect to Bradley Chubb, even if the Broncos don't pick a quarterback at number 5 overall in 2018, what would have worked better? Would it have been to draft Bradley Chubb anyway and find a way, or is it to draft Quentin Nelson, re-sign Shaq Barrett, see where Shaq goes in the future? And Shaq would have obviously been a relatively low cost guy for re-signing, although he might be more expensive now if he had the breakout that he had in Tampa Bay. And then you've got an all-pro at one of the guard spots. And so it's kind of Monday morning quarterbacking it, and it's probably not fair to Bradley Chubb, but this is when you look back and say, okay, what did we miss? And if there are, for those scouts and so forth who are in the Broncos building, you say, okay, what did we miss on Shaq Barrett? What did we not see? Because we probably should have had him regarded much more highly than we did internally.
Yep.
And that should have factored into our decision-making in the draft, what Shaq Barrett's outlook was like.
Yeah, I totally agree, Mace. So then between the rest of the backups, outside linebacker, he has got Jonathan Cooper and Derek Tuska combining for 1 sack. I'm not going to disagree with that. But Mace, Mike Clay has the Broncos edge rushers going for 21.5 sacks. I say that Vaughn should have 5 more. I say Bradley Chubb should have 3 more. And I say Malik Reid should have 2 more. That's 10. That puts that number at 31.5. That's pretty much what I'm talking about. That's what this group needs to be. And I'm even throwing in Malik Reid's numbers to help Vaughn and Chubb out here. That's what this group needs to be. And then if they do that, you couple it with Draymond Jones, how I think he should be a little more productive, how Shelby Harris should be more productive. We're talking about 50-plus sacks, and boom, that's how it's done. The huge burden here is on the outside linebackers, as it should be when you have 2 top 5 picks, when you're paying Vaughn 20-plus.
Yeah, and Malik Reid is interesting because, of course, this is his last year of his undrafted deal. He's going to, believe it or not, Malik Reid's going to be an RFA after this season.
Wow.
Time flies.
Throw that second-round tender on him.
He's going to get a little more expensive. And that's another thing that comes into play is Malik Reid's price. It doesn't go up in a massive backbreaking way, but it does go up after this year.
Does.
At the same time as Von Miller's contract expires. So you've got so much in play here. But let's say you take Malik Reid's deal right now and add it to Bradley Chubb and Von Miller, what you're paying them this year. That means you're just under $32 million for those 3 guys.
Yep.
And it is fair to expect 32 sacks among those 3.
Yep. I love it. I love it. That's how it should be. And that's how we get to the Broncos not disappointing, not being 15th through 19th in terms of sacks. That's how they get in, not just the top 10, but the top 5.
And they need to be there. They're paying for top 5 production.
Yep.
From their edge rushers. They need to be there, and it's not like the rest of the front 7 is ignored. I mean, there's a substantial investment in Shelby Harris on the interior as well.
Oh, yeah.
And we know that Draymond Jones, the interesting thing with Draymond, and the type of year that he had last year, and it's possible that he explodes, because one of the reasons why I liked the Jurrell Casey pickup last year was because skill set wise, those two are very comparable. And so far, Draymond Jones seems to be kind of following the Jurrell Casey developmental path that he had in Tennessee. The question is whether Draymond has the explosion that made Jurrell Casey a perennial Pro Bowler.
Yep.
That's what we're going to find out over the next 2 seasons. And if he has that explosion, you're going to want to find a way to keep him, but he's going to get expensive. But that kind of potential, the fact that you're already talking about a second-year guy last year who had 6 sacks, an interior guy, that's different than being on the edge. This is why whenever the rumblings about, okay, if you trade for Aaron Rodgers, what is it going to cost and what type of young players you'd have to give back, Draymond Jones is a name that pops up because he does have a lot of value right now.
He does. He absolutely does. And Mace, that'll do it for us. I really, really enjoyed this conversation. That does it for us on the live side. We're going to hop over to the podcast form. Make sure you can find us anywhere to listen to the rest of this podcast just by searching Broncos. Anywhere you find podcasts will be the first one that pops up. But for Andrew Mason, I'm Zach Stevens. Before you guys get out of here, hit us with a thumbs up, subscribe, sign up for alerts. We really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. All right, Mace, let's hop into the podcast side.